Welcome, everyone, to Odds and Ends Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. I am Andrew Joseph Kozlowski, and with me is my good friend, world-class musician, music producer, and my co-host, Mr. Cool himself, Clyde Ballard. Clyde, how are you this evening?
Feeling wonder-filled. I'm wonder-filled, man.
I love it when you say that. Well, tonight we are going to come to our conclusion interview with a guy who has absolutely charmed the pants off everybody with his wonderful, just his the way he looks at life, his wonderful talent, obviously, and that's Johnathan Lee Iverson. Just going over a couple of things. If you remember in part one of our series with Mr. Iverson, he was the youngest and the first black ringmaster of the iconic Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And he served in that role until the circus closed in 2017, making him the last ringmaster in the 146-year history of the greatest show on earth. And of course,
that also
that's
entrenches
amazing.
him in history.
It sure does.
He will be in history because of that fact.
No doubt about it. So we want to bring on a part two of our interview with Johnathan Lee Iverson. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you see Mr. Clyde Ballard, my co-host, and we're back tonight with our favorite Johnathan Lee Iverson, who has been so gracious working with us in these different segments. We're going to pick up where we left off. Of course, we talked about Johnathan being the first black man to be the ringmaster for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, an unbelievable historical thing that went on there. I think one of the things I'd like to ask you is, what was one of the favorite cities, or where were some of those cities that you went to that you really had a good time getting involved? I can't imagine Madison Square Garden in New York. Ringling Brothers in Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world, maybe. That had to be special, right?
Oh, it was always special. Absolutely. I mean, growing up in New York City.
And growing up in New York City.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, literally, I wasn't even a year out of college. And we were starring in Madison Square Garden.
I don't even realize that when we're looking at the timeline.
Yeah. I had graduated college in May of 98. And by March of 1999, I was in the middle of Madison Square Garden in a sold-out house.
That had to be incredible.
Oh, it was exhilarating. It was such a thrilling experience, and it was one of the most. It was also a tragic experience because the same day that we opened up in the garden, my father passed away that day, suddenly.
Wow.
And it was interesting because I had spoken to him the day before, Uh, and he was so funny because, he was a handsome man, beautiful man. And so, but he was he's such a flaming heterosexual fireman, Navy reservist from the,
Right.
Oh,
he
boy.
was an immigrant from Trinidad, Tobago, very practical. So the idea that his son would choose the arts for a career, that wasn't work. It didn't go off well with him, but he was supportive in his own reluctant way. And so we had a wonderful conversation the day before, and we were going back and forth. He said, "Look, do I have to wear a suit for this after party?" I said, "Yeah, just wear a suit. It's a special night." He said, "Yeah, whatever. Okay." He said, "But you're taking me to dinner the next week." That was the last thing we said. We laughed. I said, "Okay." He said, "You're going to pay for it. You got a job now." I said, I know. So, during it was such a surreal day because I knew it was going to be special because it's a garden, And I remember, in hindsight, I remember when he left because I felt it in my body. It was the weirdest thing. I was in the middle of the pre-show rehearsal because every venue we would go into, we would just have we would just check everything through a rehearsal, rigging, what have you. We run a number or two to get the animals acclimated, mainly to get performance acclimated as well, because there may have been, everything works on a rhythm, And so we were in the middle of that during a run through. And I remember I just felt like something left my body to the point where I just stopped suddenly. And I knew, it wasn't just me because the director looked at me like, I had two heads or something, but I didn't think anything of it. And I went on with the show, and, it was just such a magical evening. And, in hindsight, it was interesting because people were so protective of me the whole night because people kept rushing me through things. I'm like, why? Where are we going? Everybody's just kind of rushing me through. And so a lot of people knew, but, the decision was made. Let's let him have this night. We'll explain it after all the festivities are done. And that's exactly what happened. My mother told me about it in my hotel room after the after party, the whole thing. And it was devastating. And it was the first hard lesson I received about this life of being a performer, the price you pay, which is why I'm very merciless when it comes to, once you go in front of that curtain, once you let that spotlight hit, it doesn't matter what you're going through. You have a covenant with the audience because those people, they're coming with their stories too. They're coming with their heartbreaks and whatever, and they're there for you to take them away. Yeah, and because you have the privilege to do that for a living, to be a joy peddler, you have to forget yourself. And I'm glad I learned that lesson quick. And I was also, back to the boys choir, I was also groomed for that moment because that's how Dr. Turnbull operated.
You're only as good as your last show.
Yeah. And so you just learn how to kind of separate yourself from yourself and go into the service of your art in giving to people. And I'm glad I did. I met a lady during that run, maybe a week later, because we were there for about 3 weeks. And my father, again, he was a firefighter. So it was minor news, but it was known. And she came to the show, and this lady approached me. It was during pre-show festivities, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I didn't know if you were going to be here. I read about your dad, and I'm so sorry about that. Me and my mom, this is our tradition. My mother died in a car accident, and I didn't know if I'd see you, but I'm just so glad you're here because now I know somebody gets me." And I was like, wow. So that was that thing. But of course, Madison Square Garden was always the place. I didn't even feel like we started the tour until we got there. And New York, you play New York. One thing, it is a spiritual experience because it's a grueling run. It was a grueling run. And my run was nothing compared to the old school guys, but my run was like, 3 weeks. You would do 27 shows a week. It was just hard. It was just, on and on. You would do 20 some odd shows a week.
And how long were your tours?
The tour was 11 months out of the year.
Say it again. 7 months.
11 months out of the year.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mean 27 shows a week. I'm sorry. You did about 27. I remember my last run at the Garden was about a 27 show run in 2 weeks.
Well, okay.
So it's grueling. But what's incredible is you're so energized by the spirit of being at Madison Square Garden.
Sure.
That it doesn't even matter if one person's in the audience, which
and
it
with
never
your
was
family.
like that.
You're like a traveling family, right?
Yeah. I had the privilege of traveling with my family, raising my children on the road, and raising them with other children. So New York is one of my, obviously the top place. But, there were cities that were surprising to me that I loved going to. Salt Lake City, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Salt Lake City,
huh?
Yeah. It's a sleeper, man.
Yeah.
People don't know Salt Lake
Isn't
City.
Isn't that Mormon country?
Yeah, it's a sleeper, man. People are so wonderful out there.
Wow.
It was very welcoming, and just I really always had a great time when I went out there. I just loved it. Denver, Colorado Springs. I always loved going out west. I loved going to Houston, Texas. I loved venturing out to Miami, Florida, mainly because that was the start of the second year of the tour. So, we start back out in Miami. So it was like an extended vacation.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, I'm Johnathan Lee Iverson, ringmaster of Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey, the greatest show on earth. But I got to keep it down. I'm in my own house. This is the Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey train, the longest privately owned train in the world, with the longest running hit show in the world. This train is about 61 or 66 cars long. It's about maybe a mile and a half long. It's my house. This is my living room quarters here, and this is the pictures of my beautiful family. That's the wife here, Priscilla. She's all the way from Brazil. That's our son Matthew. That's Lila. It's like life, honestly. It's bumpy sometimes. It's really smooth sometimes. Fortunately, there haven't been any derailments. Overall, it's really an adventure. And we're performing 450 shows a year, average of 11 shows a week. And this is so much better than having to go to a hotel. I think the hardest part about living on the train is, every now and then it could get a bit claustrophobic on a very, very long ride. When we're we're traveling somewhere for about maybe 3 days. It'll take us 3 days to get there. You kind of, I don't know, I feel like the guy in The Shining every now and then. For the kids, it's wonderful. I mean, they usually, especially on long train runs, they'll be looking outside the window, or they'll be on the vestibule, and they'll, just watch America go by. The Ringling Brothers man is a domesticated man, too. I'm actually making my children's dinner. Life for a Ringling Brothers kid is like, it's like the dream childhood. To them, the spectacular, that's just a way of life. You have a built-in zoo. They're very busy children. My 6-year-old son takes acrobatics, he takes judo, he takes piano, he takes art, and he takes them with professionals in those crafts. I came on to Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey at about 22 years old, and I'm 35. There's nothing like the greatest show on earth. Once you get the sawdust in your blood, you're hooked for life. There's no recovery center for this stuff. You just have to stay in it and really enjoy it for all it's worth.
I want to say something also.
Yes.
There's a wonderful pianist who lifted me higher. His name was Doyle Newmyer.
Ah, yes, Doyle.
And he used to, every year, he would go down to Sarasota, Florida, and rehearse the circus, the new acts, before it would go out. And I don't know if you knew him, but he's an excellent, amazing musician who has great eyes. If a spec falls on the chart, he will read it.
Well, that was the thing.
Unbelievable feel for music he had.
Yeah, the musicians, you have to be on it. In my opinion, the musicians, most of them, were really
because
really
they're reading continuously. The three ring circus is
reading.
always.
They had to know how to improv. They had it like it's. I tell you, one of my best friends in the world, he's a bass player. He said it's more it's more mentally exhausting than anything, because you just you can't phone it in, because the show is a living thing, and just at the snap of a finger, anything can happen, for better or for worse. You just don't know. And
have you witnessed any grave accidents? People
oh
falling off the what?
yeah. 2014, May of 2014. We had this beautiful act that we were also vested in, because I remember them being trained. I remember them. It was completely new. Nobody had ever done it. It was a hair hanging act, and hair hanging has been in circus for many, many years. But this particular act, it was kind of like a living chandelier. That's how they set it up, and it was gorgeous. My friend, he had created the rig for it and the whole bit. His wife trained the ladies who were going to be on it, and it was about 8 performers, and they had done this act over 100 and some odd times by then. We performed it, rehearsed it, and what have you. And it was a Sunday morning in Providence, Rhode Island, and everything. It was so good. I would have this little banter kind of play thing with some of the performers. We do this silly thing. I do this grand announcement, and, they would be ascending as this curtain fell, and and you could hear the audience take their breath away, and you just see these women floating. And I would have this banter, and I'm doing it, and, one of my friends, she would look at me, and she'd like cross her eyes or something. We giggle. And we do this every night. We just had a thing, because everybody had an emotional attachment to each of those women. They were the nucleus of the show in some way. Everybody had some kind of real life emotional attachment to them. And it was ironic, they would be in the middle of the show. And so they come out with their act. It was one of the highlights of the tour. And she's going up, and we're doing the same thing. And in an instant, her face changes I hear the pop, and her face changes, and like everything slowed down. And they came down with this apparatus affixed to their heads onto concrete, came down about 25 feet. It actually hit one of the male dancers on the head. And, for a moment there, we're just like, you freeze. And I had to wrangle myself out of that, because I'm the guy. And it was that it was the thing I had avoided my whole career. I'd had accidents. There were certain things that happened, but nothing like this. And I just assumed a few of them were dead. I just assumed it, because they should have. And I tell you, the first responders were like, I swear it was like the Avengers or something. They just came out of nowhere. They were on it. And the audience, it took them a while to realize that something had occurred.
Because the band is told to keep playing, right? No matter what.
Yeah, the band kept playing. My wife, who was actually she was the production manager. So she was my boss. She was overseeing the whole show. She was making calls to what everybody needed to do in place of that. And what was crazy, because the Elephant Act was to come out right after them, so they had to take the elephants back, and we had to do so many things, and we had to carefully help the girls get unattached from the apparatus. And it was really it was the most tragic scene I'd ever seen.
And bones were broken, am I correct?
Oh yeah, necks, a lot of back injuries. We didn't know if at least 3 would walk again. There was at least 2 young ladies. Had the first responders not gotten there, they would have likely perished. One in particular, and she was the youngest, she had lacerated her liver. And so they were in they were in real bad shape. The strange thing is the power of community. Rhode Island, it was like the whole world descended upon the hospital. there was an angel watching them because this particular hospital in Rhode Island specialized in those injuries. And it was interesting, by really the first or second week, some of the girls were released. But the more severe injuries obviously would take more. Everybody's walking, people are living full lives. Nobody perished. And
Right.
of course,
Thank God for
there are
that.
certain things in the aftermath because they're definitely not performing anymore. I think only one or two young ladies can still perform, but they're back to living full lives. But it was really just this really stark reminder of how, the price we pay for this fantasy we call a circus.
But the circus takes care of them, right? Financially, insurance-wise, right?
I want to believe that. I don't know. Again, it was run by a corporation. So
Okay.
that's something I didn't follow thoroughly. You hear a lot of rumors of what happened, what didn't happen. I don't know. I would hope so. I would hope
Yes.
they took care of them. We'll find out in the coming days or weeks or so.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, I want people to also know if they want to know more about you and the history of the circus to get this PBS. It's wonderful. It gives you all the details, and you are featured in part 1 and part 2.
Yes.
It's called The Circus, Big Tent, Big Dreams.
Yeah, I was honored to be asked to do that. That was really after following the close of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey.
The emotional physics of the world did not apply under the big top.
It's life at its utmost.
It just lifts you.
It's about conjuring your own miracles. We're coming for the transcendent.
That was a wonderful project to participate in. And it was a lot. It was an education for me as well. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the experience.
Was there a closing, celebratory party for everybody?
No. No, we just, we had 4 months. We had 4 months notice before we had to end it. And so I think people were, no, there was a celebratory something, but I didn't go really. I was too busy packing. I celebrated. I went to Hamilton the next day.
Where do those animals go? What happens to the animals?
Well, the animals, most of them are privately owned. So let's say with the gentleman Alexander Lacey I told you about, he owned his lions and tigers. Or we had some ponies and things like that. Or the horses in the Cossack riding troupe. They were owned by the those who were using them. So most of the people who had animal acts, they owned them. As far as the elephants were concerned, those were the property of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, i.e. Feld Entertainment. And so they actually had a compound, the Ringling Brothers Center for Elephant Conservation, which they set up years ago, which is like 200 acres of land.
Beautiful.
That they would retire elephants on, and they would take care of them there. So that's where they went. I don't know what they've done with it since. To be honest, I've heard different things, like some elephants were given to zoos and things like that. But I don't know what's happened to it since.
And there was a Ringling Museum in Connecticut, right? In Bridgeport, Connecticut. You had a museum.
Well, there's the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is wonderful. I encourage anybody in that area, make sure you go there, support it. And there's, of course, the legendary Ringling Museum in Sarasota, Florida.
Right.
Let's talk a little about the general feeling of everybody when they heard. There were rumors for a while, right? And then you get 4 months notice. You had said it yourself. This was like a family.
Oh, of course. It was, the feelings were they were devastation to, you have to move on. As performing artists, you're used to moving on. You're just not used to a show, especially one with such historical reverence, to be closing. Yeah, as a buddy of mine told me, he said it best. He said, I always expected to leave the show. I didn't expect the show to leave me.
Yeah.
You know, because it was one of those
I like
things.
that.
It's
Yeah.
iconic. It's an American institution. It's older than Coca-Cola and Major League Baseball.
Wow.
What were you thinking about that last show?
I was just thinking about what am I going to do with my life?
After 20 years.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I wasn't happy about that change because I really enjoyed it. You know, I fully intended on dying there. You know, them pulling that hat out of my cold dead hand. You know,
But you
I had
did
it
go
all
and work
worked
with
out.
other circuses, didn't you?
No, it was just Ringling Brothers, and once you work in Ringling Brothers, what's the point? You know, in my opinion,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I was spoiled. I was traveling the country by rail car. You know, I had an apartment on a train. That was the most charming part about it. You
Is
know,
that comfortable? Was it comfortable?
Oh, it was uber comfortable. You know, we had a 2-bedroom train car, so we had bunk beds for our kids, and we had a master bedroom for my wife and I. We had a bathroom with a tub, and we had a living room space with a futon, and you know, we had a kitchen. And so every Monday, you know, which was day off and traveling day, you know, the kids, we tell our kids, listen,
Let's go to movies.
yeah, I said, don't kill each other. Watch your little movies. Here's where the food is. Mom and Dad, we are cold. I would sleep one part of the day. My wife would sleep another part of the day, and that's how we do Mondays. And then at night we'd all watch a movie or something. We'd have snacks, and it was a lot of fun. There was for a time we had a family that was like adjacent to us on a train, so you know we'd watch their kids, they watch ours. They had a boy and a girl. You know, it was wonderful. It was just the most.
Now, how did you eat? Was there like a restaurant for everybody in the circus? Or you had to cook for yourselves?
There was what we called the pie car. And we called it that because there's a whole story behind it. But there was a train car with that served food and beverages and things like that and snacks. And it was called the pie car. And we had a pie car junior that we would take to the venues that would be there as well. But we cooked, you know, my wife and I, we cooked on the train. So we had a substantial car. We had a substantial setup so we could cook.
And of course, the cars have bathrooms as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. Bathroom.
Okay.
We had a shower, bath. My daughter we were on the road with my daughter. She was 9 months old when we came back on the road with her. So, you know, we needed the bathtub and the whole bit. So she grew up. That's what she knew.
Beautiful. Now, one more question I want to know.
Let's get into
what happens to all these employees?
That's right.
You must have had 200, 300 employees. Where did they go? What do they do?
Yeah, you know, I mean, people are very resilient. The reality is, again, they're performing artists. Some went back to their home countries and found work. Others traveled elsewhere, found work. Others found positions with other shows within Feld Entertainment. And others, you know, went into other industries. And, you know, yeah, it just varies, you know. I mean, people are very resilient in that kind of trade, you know, because you're used to moving around a lot. You're used to having to pick up and go. With Ringling Brothers, it was always the creme de la creme because the contract was so long. It's, you know, you get 1-2 years for any performing artist. That's you know,
common.
That's a dream, you know.
Right. Yeah,
that's a dream because it's not bouncing from gig to gig. It's, you know, you have the steady.
Right. Now, is there any planned reunion for all of the circus performers to come together and just see each other and eat and laugh and talk anywhere?
No, we call it Facebook.
Okay.
We call it Facebook, and
okay.
I can tell you with Facebook, you've seen people like, you know what? I don't even want to see you anymore because it's so it's so highly tense and political now. I mean, there have been some rifts in relationships, but for the most part, people really it's, you know, we call it sawdust in your blood. You know, it's a fraternity that few know about, few can explain. You have to be in it to know it and to really grasp how magical it all is.
Are there any secrets?
Yeah.
Are there any secrets that you know Any secrets that you have taken from this experience that is something the public will never know, but you know?
Yeah, I would think so. There's so much, even if I try to explain it, people wouldn't believe it because I wouldn't believe it if I didn't live it, and of course it makes sense. Again, it's a magical place. People are flying, doing daring things and talking to animals. I mean, it's an unbelievable existence.
Let's talk about the opportunities that were presented, the people that you met.
Yeah.
Because of this. I mean, we read an intro here about some of the people that you got to either work with through the Boys Choir of Harlem, or you met people like Nelson Mandela and Colin Powell.
Well, I got to sing for him. I didn't meet him, but I did get to sing for him, which was surreal.
Mm-hmm. Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, it was surreal, man. It was beautiful because he had just been released from prison.
Right.
And we learned about him, all the time. I mean, we didn't think that was something that would even be a possibility. We had already resigned him to, history. And I remember how big that news was. And it was actually the Kennedy Airport. We were there, and I saw him off the plane waving, and we sang that wonderful, I think it was the South African national anthem.
Yeah.
And it was just wonderful. And it was such a beautiful moment. It was such a beautiful moment in history, and I was just privileged to be a part of it.
We mentioned
Did you sing for him also at Yankee Stadium? Were you there at that?
For who?
Nelson Mandela also came to Yankee Stadium, and the Boys Choir of Harlem sang there as well.
I don't know. I don't think I was. I don't recall. I do recall being at Kennedy Airport, and I just at least that's where I thought it was.
Well, that was no band. No band there. It was just voices. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Sure.
It felt like a dream because it was like, wow, it was so amazing. But I remember seeing his image.
We also had Colin Powell on the list, and 4 U.S. presidents that you got to sing for, I suppose. What was that like?
It was great. One of the things I always noticed about a lot of the dignitaries and, a lot of the celebrities we would meet, most of whom we really admired and looked up to, is how generous they were with their time. And, they were always cordial. Colin Powell, when he was just General Colin Powell at the time, and he was like the superstar general. And I remember we were at the Waldorf Astoria, and he came in, and, it was like, oh, Colin Powell. And I remember, he patted me on my shoulders, and I was like, oh. I felt like Forrest Gump, most of my career with the Boys Choir of Harlem. I remember we used to sing with Tony Bennett a lot.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
But this is where youth is wasted on the young. Because I'm like, well, Tony Bennett, I didn't know any better. I mean, he was just some old white dude to me. And
I
then
played
I
that
got
game
older.
with you guys, man. I played for Tony Bennett. That's when I played for him.
Right.
Yeah, man.
And then I got older. And Tony Bennett was always Tony. He's always cool, very cordial, very nice. And I got older and I got into Tony Bennett. And I'm like, wait, I used to sing with Tony and so it was one of those things. I remember singing with Lou Rawls, who was also a wonderful gentleman. There's just so many. My goodness. We had this fabulous 2-night event at Carnegie Hall. I remember with Stevie Wonder, Take Six, BB and CeCe Winans.
Yeah.
Whitney Houston made an appearance. She didn't sing. James Taylor. It was like the ultimate masterclass, and it was just beautiful. I mean, I think Quincy Jones had just passed through there, and I shook his hand, and he was so gracious. And Lena Horne was there, and I was trying to meet her. It was just like my greatest dream, And it was just a beautiful time. Patty Austin. I remember we did this wonderful concert. It was another one of those 2-night events with Patty Austin. Who was his name? Jeffrey Osborne, Roberta Flack, Peebo Bryson. Peebo Bryson made me realize that all the things we were told to avoid as singers was just a lie. Because Peebo smoked.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, I'll never forget it. Peebo Bryson, he was smoking, and he was a little late coming on stage.
Oh,
and
man.
And you could see him coming out. It was so funny. We see this trail of cigarette smoke, and he's fixing his collar, but he gets out on stage and just blows the roof off. I mean, that voice was just like, just springtime, man. And I said, he's smoking, and he's smoking.
Right.
Now,
hey, I wanted to also say one more thing too. I wanted to apologize because I said something about, you said the circus is one of the most liberal places to be. And I said, yeah, because they accept freaks. Nobody's a freak.
No, you know what's funny
they're
about
wonderful
the title?
human beings. They're just different types of people.
No, I hear what you're
saying. I said that because that's what people call them. So that's not how I feel.
I appreciate that. You know, it's funny. I heard a wonderful magician who once said, in regards to, he said, I don't have the honor to be called a freak. You know, because a lot of those people don't realize a lot of those people were independently wealthy because of what they did. You know, some people, they're being exploited, but what else would they have done in the real world? You know, in the real world, they were seen as freaks, but with these different shows, they were the gods. You were paying, and it was their own money. They were self-sufficient. You know, they had their own lives. And, you know, that's a part of it that a lot of people don't talk about. You know, a lot of those folks, they weren't destitute somewhere. A lot of these people, because of circuses, because of carnivals, you know, they took what, you know, nature gave them, which we thought was something odd, and they turned it into gold.
An enterprise.
Yeah, they enterprise with it, which is a very American thing.
That's right.
Oh, for sure. Listen, your children, how old are they now?
My children now are 15 and 11.
Wow. And do they have any interest in the arts at all, performing arts? Or?
Oh, yes. My son and my daughter are musicians. My daughter is a singer. She's a dancer. She's show business. And my son is a budding musician. He plays the double bass.
Great.
He plays the violin. He plays the recorder. He's on the nerd spectrum. My children speak multiple languages, thank goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, my wife she's a Brazilian native, and so she spoke Portuguese to them from birth, which is what we agreed on. I said there can only be one dummy in this house. You have to speak to them. And so they know Spanish. They know a little French as well.
What about you?
I know when
você compreende português também? Fala
man,
português?
listen, I know when they're plotting against me.
See?
Well, let me ask you now. I don't know if Clyde has talked to you about it, but we are both involved with an organization that we started back in 2002 called the Josephine Foundation.
Okay.
And that foundation supplied over $4 million already in arts grants and scholarships for people to follow their dreams in the arts. And we deal with kids of all ages, all kinds of nationalities, financial status, and all kinds of things. And I, being a guy who's traveled around the world in theater, and Clyde being a guy who's been in the orchestra with the bass all over the place, we had a lot to offer at that point. We ask everybody that comes on, if you were standing in front of a class of these kids that were ready, that came up to you and said they want to be performing artists, what 3 pieces of career advice would you give them?
Be absolutely jealous over that which makes your blood beat, because you have to fight for this thing. Because anytime you attempt, and whatever it is, you know, anytime you attempt to be what God made you to be, there's going to be opposition. And the reason why artists are so admired is because this is not for the faint of heart. I always see circus performers as the most extraordinary because of the risk and because of the unusual nature of what they do. And so what we know in circus is what every performing artist knows, even if they don't, is that it's a compulsion, it's a calling, and you have to trust it, and you have to go with it, and you have to fall in love with it, and you have to suffer with it, and you just have to go through the process of it. You know, as James Baldwin wrote, love is a war, love is it's a battle, it's a growing up, you know, And that's what it is to be an artist to the truest sense. So really be vigilant and dogged and guarded about that, especially against yourself. Second, I would say, and this may wrangle some people the wrong way, but depending on what craft you are drawn to, I would think it best, rather than go to college for it, I would recommend you get lessons in it. You join arts organizations for it, whoever teaches it in that way, in a practical sense, especially those that have a performing component to it. And instead, go to a trade school or something. Get a trade, just so you can always feed yourself. Not a backup plan, but get a trade, just so you just have that in your back pocket. Something, and I would say something with tech, something with computers, something, and have that in your back pocket. Not a backup plan, but when you do get in those spaces where, you got to eat, always keep your eyes on the prize, because I'm a realist. The reality is you suffer for this thing. And, and some have a natural savvy when it comes to being business people, because you are a show business person. And I really hope we really we get to a point where that's a cultural normalcy. That's cultural normalcy as artists, is that we understand we're show business people, and that you have to purport yourself like a business, and that what you are offering is a real valuable product that reverberates for generations. Third, I would say remember your audience, and I think that takes some maturity, but there will come a time when you realize, and this is what will give you longevity, is understanding that you are responsible for the time, money, and imagination of those who are giving you the privilege to share your craft with them. It is a service and it is an exchange. And you should always take that sacredly, especially the imagination of those whom you're performing for, whom you're entertaining. You should really, really be careful with what energy you're putting out there. You should never be careless with it. You don't go into this to merely serve yourself. You go into this to you'd be surprised what your craft, what your presence does for people in a real tangible way.
Oh, no doubt. And boy, you've put it about as well as anybody could put it. That's for sure. What's on the agenda? What's coming up? What do you plan to do now?
Oh, yeah. Coming up on September 26th and 27th, you'll see me back under the big top, so to speak. The Lone Star Circus. See?
Okay.
Lone Star.
Okay.
And Lone Star Circus is a wonderful, wonderful organization. See, I'm up here having time.
I see it, yeah. Lone Star,
There we
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a wonderful circus out in the Lone Star state, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. It's a great, wonderful circus. It's a non-for-profit circus. So for anyone out there who wants to make a contribution, they have a school, a circus school. But they also, they perform, they bring in some wonderful acts and things like that. And so we actually just filmed a virtual offering that we're going to premiere on the 26th and the 27th of September. It'll be on, it'll definitely be featured on Facebook and other online platforms as well.
So how would we tell our audience they could keep track of all that? Yeah, how can they
dial in? And you can go to their fan page on Facebook, Lone Star Circus, or you can look them up at LoneStarCircus.org, I believe, LoneStarCircus.org. So you can track that, and you can or LoneStarCircus.com, but it's .something.
Great.
You can
We'll
track
find out. We'll get it.
We'll
post it for you as well.
Awesome.
What else do you have that you want to plug? Anything?
I'm doing some voiceover work, Fortunately, I'm doing a bit of voiceover work, and I want to really get that up more. As you can see here,
You got a great
behind,
voice, man.
Oh, thank you. As you can see here, I host a show called In Center Ring. I
Okay.
just finished my 20th episode. I'm working on it right now.
Is this a
But
podcast or?
it will be a podcast. Right now, it's a vlog, as they call it, and it's featured on my YouTube channel, the Last Ringmaster channel. And
All
it's
right, wait,
also
let's make sure everybody gets that. What's the YouTube channel?
the Last Ringmaster channel.
Okay, Last
And
Ringmaster
it's
channel.
also on my Facebook fan page. I always stream it every Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
11 a.m. is when I stream it on Facebook. 7 p.m. is when I stream it on YouTube. And it's wonderful. It's it's me having a one-on-one chat with some of the most wonderful and interesting people in the circus industry, all who have tremendous stories. And I also hold a Ringmaster story time every Sunday. Around 7 p.m. I like to stream it on my Facebook fan page. And it's just me just putting some light out there into the world. It's called Ringmaster Storytime. People have taken to it. I just basically get up in my costume and I read children's books in a very theatrical manner.
Well, you sure have shown some light around the world as your role as a ringmaster with Ringling Brothers, and just the very way you beam when you talk about everything that's going on in the performing arts world. We're absolutely thrilled to have had you on, and I hope you had a good time, and I hope you'll come back and visit with us.
Absolutely. This was great, man. It was great seeing you again, Clyde. Listen.
Oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
I want everybody to remember, keep the circus alive inside you.
Yes, sir. Well, we hope you'll come back again, and we hope all the best for you in the upcoming days ahead with your podcast and with your trip to Dallas and the virtual circus. I hope everything works out great for you, and we'll be in touch real soon. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Johnathan Lee Iverson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Be well, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Clyde, what a pleasure it was to have Johnathan on with us. And boy, he certainly is somebody we'll be keeping an eye on. In the future, we'll get him back on here.
He has lived such a wonderful life with so many great experiences to share.
The people he's been around and the people he's performed with. And he started his career as a 12-year-old, really, with the Boys Choir of Harlem. Just an amazing. We're meeting some really, really amazing people on this program that we're able to sit and have a conversation with.
I'm loving it myself.
I
hope the people enjoy it as much as I do.
Well, I hope so. That's for sure. Folks, stay advised of all the events by following the Josephine Foundation on our Facebook page and Instagram account. A big thanks again to our special guest tonight, Johnathan Lee Iverson. On behalf of my co-host, Mr. Clyde Billard, our producer, Mr. Gio Vitozzi, and myself, peace, strength, and love until we see you next week on Odds and Ends Life Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. Good night, everybody.
And stay bright.
Amen, brother.
Because when you stay bright, it means you have hope.
There we go.